Binge the full week of The Ray Taylor Show ad-free over at inspireddisorder.com/plus.
This is The Ray Taylor Show.
Welcome to The Ray Taylor Show, where I bring you the reviews of the latest movies and TV shows, as well as classic and foreign films. I'm your host, Ray Taylor, and this podcast, I'll be talking about all of the things film and television. Whether you're looking for a new show to binge, want to know if that blockbuster is worth the trip to the theater, or just want to hear some thoughts on a classic or foreign film, Ray Taylor Show has you covered. So join me every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday for new episodes, and let's dive into the world of film and television together. In this episode, I am reviewing Decision to Leave, Park Chan-wook's newest film. Came out this year, written and directed by Park Chan-wook. Also co-written by Chung Seo-kyung. One of my favorite directors. I recently reviewed or talked about and ranked my top 5 Park Chan-wook films. So if you want to hear my in-depth opinions on my favorite Park Chan-wook films, check that out. Top 5 Park Chan-wook films, Ray Taylor Show. And one thing about doing that is that it kind of gets me in the vibe of a director when I get to watch all of their work at the same time. So coming into this movie, I knew this was a movie coming out this year. I was anticipating this movie, looking forward to watching this movie, and it finally became available on streaming through, I think, Mubi, which I signed up for a trial version just so I could watch this film. And it's a movie that I enjoy. It's a movie, the brief summary of this film: a detective investigates a man's death in the mountains. He meets the dead man's mysterious wife in the course of his sleuthing. It's a neo-noir mystery detective film, a movie that has a lot of twists and turns, that is for sure. And definitely allows Park Chan-wook to really flex his muscle, bringing a stylistic view to this movie. Kind of reminded me of some of his the short film that was in the Three Extremes series called Cut. This being a pretty dark movie, mystery, but also has sprinkles of humor throughout, which I appreciated. So it's another great Park Chan-wook film, I would say. Maybe not my favorite of his. If I had to redo the top 5 list, this would probably be on the list, but not very high. I don't know. I don't even remember what my list is of his top 5, but it's not my favorite of his, but still better than the majority of films coming out. And I would say he is getting better as a director, despite the fact that this movie may not be on my top 5 of his list of movies. It's still a great film, and he's doing very interesting things in this mystery film about a sad detective suffering from insomnia. At some point, I should do a top 5 of movies featuring where a main character is dealing with insomnia. This movie, you have the movie Insomnia, and also Fight Club. And I'm sure there's other movies where the main character is suffering from insomnia. We have great performances by our lead, Hae-il, played by Park Hae-il, playing the detective. Great performance from him. Also, we get a great performance from the actress who is the suspect in this crime. Seo Ray is her character's name, played by Tang Wei. Her performance was amazing as well. Definitely two standout performances from this movie of, this unconventional story. Love story on some levels, mystery. Maybe not unconventional, but very unique, I would say. So it's about this detective who starts to fall in love with this woman who's a suspect in a murder, and he becomes increasingly drawn to her over the course of the film. This has many twists and turns in this film, as things unfold, and definitely has a lot of Park Chan-wook's kind of notable themes as far as crime, drama, romance, thriller, and as I said before, seasoned with a bit of comedy. There are definitely some scenes in this movie that have a comedic flair to them, almost like one of them reminded me of like Wes Anderson, which is kind of weird in a way to have Park Chan-wook evoke the thoughts and emotions of a Wes Anderson film, which I would say Sympathy for Mrs. Vengeance, I believe it's called, Miss Vengeance, also has a lot of Wes Anderson vibes to that film. But the comedy kind of has that Wes Anderson vibe, also Coen Brothers vibe to it, just sprinkled in. It's not a comedy, but there's definitely some comedic moments where, like, the way this movie starts off definitely made me feel like it was going to be more wacky than it ended up being. It definitely ended up being more dark and grounded of a mystery. But the little sprinkles of humor throughout, I think, give it a heart and give it a realness that I appreciate it. I appreciate it. Made me love this movie even more. Just kind of filled it out, rounded it out a little bit more, where it's not just this mystery that's in some ways kind of confusing. I mean, our main character has insomnia, and I want to think that Park Chan-wook did it on purpose, told this story in the style that it's told and edited and directed to be a little bit disorienting, as somebody who may have insomnia would experience life a little bit disorienting. And in its confusion, I could see how maybe some audience members might be a little confused, might be a little bit difficult to follow along. But once, at least for me, once I noticed that it had those kind of flourishes, that it was kind of doing those things, I was along for this crazy ride. So I would say this movie, very much a kind of a unique type of a love story, definitely in that vein of a neo-noir or a noir film where you have a detective and the suspect that he's investigating, they kind of have this connection. And very, Park Chan-wook, no stranger to kind of an offbeat or different type of telling of a love story in his vampire film Thirst, or the kind of offbeat, almost hipstery comedy in I'm a Cyborg, but that's okay. Definitely both have unconventional love stories told very interestingly within these kind of like surreal movies. At least I'm a Cyborg, but I'm okay with that. Very surreal type of a movie that has that offbeat humor to it, and an interesting, unique type of a love story. Thirst, vampire movie, very similar as well. Maybe not as offbeat, but definitely a new take on things. The vampire, and I would say vampire movies pretty commonly have a love interest in them. But also fun moments, as I said, Three Extremes cut. Very interesting stylized type of a look from Park Chan-wook in that short film from Three Extremes. But also probably the most comedy that he has had. I mean, it's definitely not a comedy. Definitely more of a dark comedy, that short film. But interesting to see that humor, because there's not a lot of humor in a lot of Park Chan-wook's films. They definitely can tap into emotions pretty severely. There are some very emotional gut punches in a lot of Park Chan-wook films, but comedy isn't necessarily something. I mean, it's definitely a flavoring that he likes to use within his films, and I'd say this movie has that as well. But definitely more of very stylized directing and editing, I would say. This movie, the way it's edited and told, like, things float in and out of like metaphorical to grounded to almost reenactments as characters, like as the detective is staking out this suspect, There's scenes where he is shown to be in the same place as the suspect, while in reality he's, looking far away with binoculars through a window. And as people recount stories of events, those stories kind of play out, and it's all almost seamlessly floats in and out, which I would say very much ties in with the disorientation you would have dealing with insomnia. This detective who can't sleep, he's obsessed with these crimes that are unsolved, and goes on these stakeouts because he can't sleep. And it in some ways is affecting, as he is shown in the beginning of this film, driving as he's staking out a suspect, almost falling asleep as he's driving, or possibly even tailing them. But kind of an interesting style where it feels it's jumping around from different perspectives and things, but I would say handled, it could easily go off the rails and easily make this movie far more difficult to follow along with. But I think once you get the handle on how Park Chan-wook is telling this story, it's easier to kind of go with the flow, as it were, as he's kind of telling all these, telling this story in a very disorienting way. But I appreciated that. It's unique, kind of stylized, a lot of stylized shots, which gorgeous. A lot of shots that are set up and just look beautiful throughout this entire film. Stylistically, Park Chan-wook is, I think all of his films have a unique and beautiful style to them, and this movie's no different at all. But it's definitely a movie, I would say, a must. If you're a Park Chan-wook fan, obviously a must. If you're a neo-noir fan, you like those types of stories, this is definitely a great one. A well-written story. Almost has vibes as well as he did one, God, what was it? It was about the border between South and North Korea. I forget what the name of that film is. One of his earlier films. Probably not his best, definitely not as stylistic, but definitely I would say shows, I'm not even sure if he wrote it, but it definitely shows he's a great storyteller, even in telling a mystery, how he's able to let things unfold and kind of come out as the story's going along. So you have Hae-il as the detective investigating this suspect's death of a man who's fell off a mountain, right? Suspected suicide, but you don't know. And his wife, much younger than him, he's 60 years old. She's probably in her 30s or whatever. So she is a suspect. And through the course of this movie, you see that there's kind of a connection between them. But so it starts off, he's investigating. This movie starts with him investigating this thing. He's on the scene of the crime, and has to go up. And we see one of the first comedic moments that made me feel like maybe this movie is going to be more of a comedy than I had thought, because I didn't know anything going into it other than it was a Park Chan-wook film. And there's a scene where he's he's a by-the-book, thorough investigator. And because this guy fell off of a mountain, off the top of this mountain, he wants to retrace the steps that he fell. So it's this sheer cliff. And he's using this motorized thing to help him scale this sheer mountain face. And as he's doing that, his partner is just strapped to his back, which is just imagery is hilarious. Just absolutely hilarious, as he's using this machine to bring them up so they don't have to actually climb. And then his partner is strapped to his back like a baby, in one of those baby backpacks, but instead of on the front, he's just hanging off the back. Why are we even doing this? Why aren't we going the easier route around the back of this mountain? And the detectives, we got to do this, right? This is how he fell down, so we need to go up and see everything. We need to follow the steps correctly. So very similar, very, very funny. Very funny. Let's take a little break from the show to promote the benefits of Inspired Disorder Plus. So you go inspireddisorder.com/plus. Sign up, $5 a month. You get to binge the full week of The Ray Taylor Show ad-free. You get to watch all of the live painting videos I do. You get a special members-only discount and deals for all of the artwork and merch that I sell. You also get the complete podcast back catalog of every podcast I've ever produced, hundreds of episodes, countless different podcasts. You also get access to my personal blog. A new blog comes out every week. In addition to that, you get my creative writing that I'm releasing. You also get access to Asking Me Anything. 14 years of experience podcasting. I've been creating art my entire life. I've been using Photoshop since middle school, and you can contact me to ask me questions about that or anything else. So those are the benefits for signing up for Inspired Disorder Plus. And now let's get back to the show. And, we find out the man's wife, Seo Ray, she's called in for questioning. And we find out that she's been abused by this guy. She's been branded by this guy. We see that all of his things are branded with his initials on them, his phone case, his wallet, his flask. And she has a tattoo of his initials on her. So it's definitely a man who's very possessive and obviously abusive. So almost giving her motive to want to kill this guy because he beats her. And as the investigation goes on, obviously more is uncovered. And the story ends up taking a lot of twists and turns. And ultimately, it's like this tragically beautiful and unique love story, right? About two people that can't be together, but and come from very different lives, come from very different perspectives, but somehow are almost perfect together. Like there's definitely scenes where you're seeing them and how they interact, whether it's a meal or out on a walk. You see that there is like an effortless connection between the two of them, but you know that there's no reality where that could be realized. So very interesting type of a love story, and just two people that fit, but from such different places, but it just could never work. So as I want to talk about this movie, I want to talk about spoilers. So spoiler warning for those as I kind of dig into the details of this movie, because I did enjoy this movie quite a bit. So spoiler warning. So we see Hae-il, which is kind of a funny... I'm sure I'm pronouncing it wrong, but that's kind of how it's written out. My Americanized translation of a Korean name. Like you can see that he's immediately drawn to this woman, say Seo Ray, right? Puts her under surveillance, and then you see Seo Ray kind of surveilling him and like following him as he's doing, like in investigating this crime, he's also investigating other crimes. And on one of these stakeouts where she's following him, you see this kind of cool scene where he's chasing down, him and his partner are chasing down a suspect, and it ends up on a roof, and the guy pulls out a knife, and then the detective puts on like this chainmail glove to grab the knife, and he ends up beating the guy, and meanwhile she's just kind of at a distance watching all of this happen. So you're seeing that she's like knows that he's surveilling her, and she's doing the same to him. And it's almost like she's playing with him, almost like they're flirting in a way, right? It's like this flirting via detective work where they both know that each other is watching them, so they're in some ways performing for them as they're watching, saying things that they know is being recorded in a way to communicate. It's like a very interesting way for this suspect and this detective are kind of doing this kind of cat and mouse thing, but really it's more of a flirtation thing in the language of detective. Very, very unique, very like interesting, like really draws you in and shows how like perfectly they fit. Like the fact that she is communicating to him in his same language of detective sleuthing is so unique and so like beautiful in a way. And he finds out that she's wanted in China, right? She can't go back to China. If she does, she'll be arrested, life in prison, whatever, because she's suspected of killing her mom. But we find out that, like, obviously it's not as simple as that. She learned how to be a nurse. Her mom was sick, so she learned how to be a nurse to take care of her. And in many ways, her killing her mom was helping her mom end the pain and the suffering, right? And now she does similar things for other grannies, right? She has this Monday granny. She has a different granny that she takes care of. And they all love her. They all treat her as if she's their grandchild, right? But she has this past, and that's why she's in Korea. That's why she's, maybe with these people that, don't treat her well, right? She knows she can't go to the police about her husband beating her because she fears of being deported and sent back to China where she'll just be put in prison, right? So due to her circumstances, trying to do the right thing for her mom kind of puts her in a situation where she has to live a certain lifestyle, which is just kind of crazy. So they they have this kind of secret relationship, right? As they were flirting, eventually it gets to a point where, and Hae-jun's like situation in life, he is like, he's married, but he only sees his wife on the weekends. There's this conversation with him and his wife early on in the movie where somebody was talking to his wife and saying, like, the certain percentage of people that have weekend marriages don't last, and her comeback was, oh, well, people who have sexless marriages don't last either. But their situation, so he has like this apartment, he works out of town, he's in this apartment for 5 days of the week, and then comes home to his wife who has a job in this other town, Ipoh, and he's there on the weekend. So while he's at his apartment, he starts having, and it's not really necessarily like a sexual relationship. It's definitely like just they go on walks and get to know each other. She gets to know a lot about him, at least. He cooks for her. They prepare meals. She kind of helps him with his investigations. It's kind of just an interesting. He's trying to learn Chinese, right? So he can communicate with her because she's, very uncomfortable with her Korean. Like, just a very interesting dynamic between these people that can't be together for so many reasons. I mean, he's married. She's potentially killed her husband. Although it's kind of eventually there's no proof. So it's kind of, and I think that's when they start hanging out, is once she's kind of cleared of this crime, then they start hanging out. And she sees his apartment. She sees behind one of his curtains how he has all these pictures put up, and those are like the unsolved crimes that he kind of goes back to, and those are the things that keep him awake. Those are the things that are responsible for his insomnia. And in her trying to help him out, she kind of introduces new ideas into one of the cases, referring to maybe this person is still in love with another person, even though that person got married or whatever. It's like, just because somebody gets married doesn't mean that your feelings for them disappear, and leads him to basically solve that crime, right? Not successfully, but, at least it's a case that can be closed finally. So she's kind of in a way not only helping him try to sleep in that way, trying to remove some of these unsolved cases from this wall, but also she has techniques that she learned from U.S. Navy of how to go to sleep, and she does this with him one night to help him sleep. So she's really trying to help him, right? Which we actually see later on is a little bit more deceptive, right? She has a purpose behind it, right? She's playing him, and a lot of which, when that reveal happens, is crazy. And it gets to a point where she's like taking the pictures down to burn them because it's like, okay, you need to get rid of these things. And she starts taking the pictures down of her because her case is closed. Right? When they're going on this walk, he has all these recordings that he does with his smartwatch of, things that he notices, and just that's how he takes his notes, through these voice memos. And she's listening to them while they're on these walks bonding. And she's like, well, you don't need these anymore. She starts deleting all of those. Right? He ends up keeping a couple pictures of her because he likes them. He likes the way she looks. Right? So she allows him to keep, a few of the pictures. But while he's taking care of Monday Granny, right? I forget exactly why she's not able to show up. I think, another one of her grannies is in the hospital. So he offers to go take care of Monday Granny. And while taking care of her, she's having problems with her phone. And he gets the phone and he's like, oh, you need to, close all these apps. You have too many apps open. And one of the apps is like a fitness tracker. And he sees on one of the days, it shows that this granny, this old lady who's never left her apartment in a decade, went up 138 flights of stairs, which is insane. And he realizes, he starts putting things together and starts to realize that, maybe Seo-rae actually did do this thing. And then you see, as he's recreating to see if his idea's correct, you also see alongside that what Seo-rae may have done to pull off this thing, right? And it's beautiful how it's told. It's also tragic because he realizes this woman that he cleared, that he clearly has a thing for, in some ways, now he finds out that she did do it. It's possible she did do it, right? This is proof, this phone that shows she swapped the phones out so that her phone would stay at Monday Granny's, right? So when they check the phone records, that's her alibi. She took the granny's phone because the service that she works for calls in to check to make sure that the nurse shows up. And when the patient can't answer the phone, the nurses will answer the phone. So while she's doing this thing, she's answering the phone, right? And, of course, the detectives didn't check Granny's phone because that's not part of the investigation. But that's why it shows on her thing that because she went up the mountain. 138 flights of stairs. And when he gets to the mountain, he looks at his phone. It's 138. And it's like, oh, no, this woman played me. Right? And then you think, she deleted all of the evidence that he had. All of the things that he was researching to find her out. She completely played him. Completely played him. Made him think whether there was a connection there or not. Was able to use his attraction to her and his affection towards her in a way for her to get to have the ability to delete all the voicemails, to burn all the pictures, But there's this one piece of evidence left that's like, okay, I think I got her now. And it's just, it's one of those great moments. Maybe not as much of a gut punch. Like, there's definitely big gut punch. There's definitely a gut punch at the end of this movie. But it's definitely one of the many twists in this. Like, she's, been masterminding this whole thing. I want to take a quick break from the show to let you all know that there is official merch for the Ray Taylor Show. Head on over to inspireddisorder.com. You can get t-shirts, different artwork available, different designs, all on high quality materials. in all the sizes. There's also iPhone cases made of biodegradable material. That's right. This is not bad for the environment. This is good for the environment. So all of those designs that are available on t-shirts are also available on phone cases. Designed by me, sold by me. Head on over to inspireddisorder.com to support the Ray Taylor Show and promote it out in the world so all of the people in your life can see that you are a fan of the Ray Taylor Show. Now, let's get back to that very show right now. But then he goes, confronts her, and finds, she helps put the remaining pieces together of why certain things, other things, like there's this letter that was sent that seemed like it was a suicide note. There were these threats against her husband, which there were threats, but she manufactured the letters. She manufactured the letter that sounded like a potential suicide, right? She fills in all the holes that still existed for this detective. And he decides, because of his attraction to her, decides to help cover it up, right? Replaces Granny's phone, and he tells her, you need to get rid of this phone, throw it in the ocean, because it's the only piece of evidence that's left, is this phone with these steps showing that you took the phone, And he tells her that she shattered him, like she shattered his heart, or, she shattered him. She doesn't know the word shattered, so after he leaves, she looks it up and sees the definition. And in that moment, she cries and she realizes that she broke a good man, right? He's trying to help her out. He authentically cared for her in a way she's probably never experienced from a dude, because of her situation, is with this guy who's treated her like garbage, right? And she, in using this guy, she realized that, he loves her. And she broke him, and she feels regret for that in that moment with just like this single tear, Crazy. And then you see kind of things change. He moves back in with his wife, right? He moves to Ippo, which is a small place, not a lot of crime, so it's the thing that he's obsessed with, solving murders, solving crimes. He's kind of removed from that, like he's experiencing a lot of depression, still has the insomnia. His wife, a character that's mostly sidelined for this movie. I mean, she's somebody that has her own job, lives in a different city, different place. So but she seems like a nice person, but clearly not a person that fits with him in the same way Seo Rei does. But he tries to distance himself from that, moves away, goes to this other place, goes to try and rekindle this life with his wife, while also dealing with the depression of his life, And then he sees her in a market randomly with a new husband, another dirtbag guy, and that guy ends up stabbed. And it's like, okay, right, I know you killed your first husband. This has now happened. I know they're not good guys, but you better have a rock solid thing. And it's like a thing in the movie where it almost loses some momentum after he tries to help her and then moves away. And then now there's this other death, and it's like, what, another death? And the way things like come together, even though they found the guy that actually killed him, even though she like brilliantly covered her tracks, the way this movie ends, like this brutal ending, right? Where in her mind, the only way like, there's no way that she could be with him, right? There's no way he's going to, even though his wife leaves, right? Seems like she has her own thing on the side too, right? She eventually leaves. And even though maybe they could have been together, but that, he can't, like, this, she's a criminal. She's killed too many people, right? He knows that she's done that, and it goes against everything he stands for as a detective, right? He's this great detective guy, he's not like a brilliant guy like a Benoit Blanc or anything like that, but he's dedicated to being a detective and solving these crimes, and that gives him a lot of, that's what he's obsessed with. That's what his passion is, being a detective. And to be with her goes against everything. So despite the fact they fit so well together, it's like a love that could never happen, which is tragic, right? And she knows that. And she knows that the only life she can ever have is going to be a life with people that aren't going to treat her right. And she feels the only way to forever be with this guy, this detective, is to become an unsolved crime. The thing that he will always have up on his wall, the thing that he will always think about at night. The only way she can be with him forever. Kind of a poetic, tragically poetic end. And the way she does it is just insane, right? He's trying to go stop her, doesn't know what she's going to do. But she goes to the beach and digs a big hole and then sits in the hole with the bucket in her lap and waits for the tide to come in to basically suck all the water into the hole and bury her under the sand of the beach. So by the time, and it's like a scene where you see how time passes by where the sun is, right? When she first gets there, the sun's like not even close to setting yet, right? It's still, it's still got a ways to go. And there's the great shot of the sun as the tide comes in and washes the sand down, and you see, the sun. And then by the time he gets there, the sun is already kind of gone below the horizon. So you're seeing passage of time by the sun where it is based on the horizon, and you're seeing how he's gotten there way too late. Like, even by the time where he finds out where she is under the sand, probably dead already, right? Drowned. I would imagine the way she did that is the missing fentanyl pills that she kept. I have a feeling she took those, right? So she got in the hole, she took the pills, and then probably passed out, and the water kind of just did the rest. Buried her under the sand, which is just, it's like so unique, like by far the most kind of gut punch, brutal suicide you could come up with, right? It's brilliant, right? Letting the tide come in and fill in this hole with the sand and even where she put the sand past the hole, obviously as the water comes in, it's going to pull that sand right back over that hole as it comes in and out. Brilliant. And tragic, where he's never going to find her. Never going to find her. Unless they do, like, who knows how they would. It's like, I don't understand how they couldn't. It wouldn't be able to, just like a brilliant kind of brutal end to it. And also very, like, poetically beautiful, right? This tragic person that found somebody who actually cares for her, and they fit so well together, but because of who he is and what he's passionate about, they can never be together. So very brutal, traumatic love story at the same time. But just it's just the twists and turns of this movie are so great. It's just a beautiful movie, right? Decision to Leave, absolutely beautiful, engaging mystery, film that keeps you on your toes, right? Because the momentum, the storytelling, constantly moving, you're constantly having to like put the pieces together of what you're seeing, and just gorgeous. It's just thrilling and emotional. Great take on a film noir setup. Great performances by the two leads, Park Hae-il and Tang-wee. Great performances by them. I mean, a movie that really, really, a lot of their relationship and the way they fit together is so much dependent on their chemistry as actors, and it's like perfect. It's perfect. Her performance, I would say, blew me away. One of my favorite female performances of the year by far. Aside from the Indian film Gangubai Kathiawadi, this might be those are my top two female performances of the year. And I'm sure neither will get a nomination, but it is what it is. And I think it's, a great film despite its complexity. I think the way it's handled, the way it's told is brilliant. Director Park Chan-wook, he knows how to make a great movie. He knows how to tell unique stories. He knows how to put the audience on a great ride, and I think he does it again here. Absolutely. Highly recommend this movie. Especially if you're a Park Chan-wook fan. If it doesn't have, I would say there's movies like Old Boy or even like Sympathy for Mr. Vengeance, or I'm blanking on some of his other films, but there's a similar gut punch, similar like tragic nature to it. And also, even in like Sympathy for Mr. Vengeance, there's some comedy in that movie as well. Another detective type of a story. Great. He's one of my favorite directors, one of my favorite storytellers working, and everything he does, it's just so interesting. Constantly pushing himself a little bit further, trying new things, and really showing his brilliance as an artist, as a director, and I really appreciate it. So I'd highly recommend checking out Decision to Leave. One of my favorite movies of the year. I don't know where it's going to be. Maybe I'm going to be doing my top 5 of 2022 list, and the more I think about this movie, the more I like it, and I don't know where it's going, if it'll make my list or not. So you'll have to check in. A lot of great movies, and I'm only doing a top 5, which is ridiculous. Maybe I should open it up to a top 10. That way I can fit in more of these great movies that I loved. But that will be coming up on Sundays. I do top 5, so look forward to that. But as always, thank you all for watching and tuning in to The Ray Taylor Show. I hope you enjoyed my thoughts on Decision to Leave. Don't forget to tune in on Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays for more movie or TV show reviews. And join the conversation by leaving a comment or rating on your favorite podcast platform or on YouTube. Until next time, this has been Ray Taylor signing out.
New episodes of The Ray Taylor Show come out every single day. Subscribe on YouTube and everywhere our podcasts are found. Binge the full week over at inspireddisorder.com/plus. Buy Ray Taylor Show merch over at inspireddisorder.com. Have a wonderful day, everybody. Peace out!
Today is the day where you wake up and you realize that everything that you've been dreaming about, everything that you've been wanting, every goal and wish and hope that you've ever had can become real. Dreams can come true. What you manifest in your mind, you can bring to reality.